All right, guys, welcome. Here you go. Listen, you won't believe this. You won't believe it. I got some things I want to show you, and then I've got a confession to make. So hang on a second. Here comes something that we're all going to want to talk about.
I don't feel like my reputation needs to be reclaimed. Let's say it for the record. I'm not embarrassed by anything I've done. Um, you know, I guess my greatest crime is I had a relationship with a man, but that's not something that I find embarrassing in any way. And I know that I have not done anything that's illegal. And so I don't feel like my reputation needs to be reclaimed. And when I tell you the outpouring of women, and I'll tell you this, especially African American women who will just say, we are so proud, you are such a good representative of us. But I would be lying to say it's only African American women. I have had Caucasian women, Asian women, Indian women. I told Jeff one day, I didn't think I was the face of the feminist movement, but somehow I became it. And I think that women feel like women are treated differently when they're professionals, and they're proud to see someone that is strong and trying to do the right job. Certainly flawed, like every human being is flawed. My father has a saying, only one perfect man walked the face of the earth and they crucified him. I am not a perfect human being, but what I am is a hardworking human being and a human being that loves the community I serve and who understands this seat does not belong to me. It belongs to the people, and as long as I'm here, I'm going to try to do the job in a way that's honorable.
All right, there you have it, folks. There's Fani Willis, the face of the feminist movement. Welcome to Inside the Law. I'm your host, Philip Holloway, and I want to start out with an apology for being late, but I'm also going to have to confess it was because I forgot to hit the go live button. I've actually been here for about 10 minutes talking about this stuff, but fortunately, I've not been talking to myself. I've been reading some of the comments in the chat, even thinking about them, but I've been talking with this guy right here, Nate the lawyer. He and I have just been carrying on. We've been dissecting all of this. We've been we said some really cool stuff that, quite frankly, I wish you guys had heard. But that one's on me. I totally forgot to hit the go live button, and I saw somebody in the chat, Nate, and they said, "Wait a minute, what's going on? Why is he late?"
What's going on? Oh, my people in the chat. How's everybody doing? Look at all these guys show up. Hey guys, what's going on?
Nate, have you ever done anything like that stupid and
yeah.
just not hit the button?
Oh yeah. I remember one time I think we went almost an hour one time. We were talking, drinking, having so much fun. And I was like, and then so we're reading the chat, and it was funny because it was like the chat was still going because we were like, oh, they're talking, responding to us. Next thing you know, we're like, oh, we never hit go. So we had to like reschedule the chat and do everything. So it was crazy, but yeah. So
I was over here. I was thanking some of these folks for the super chats in here. I was recognizing the new members, and we were doing all kinds of stuff. And I just looked over, and the next thing I know, I'm like, wait a minute. Somebody said, "Are you late for a very important date?" I'm like, "What, did I miss Easter or what's going on?"
Look at this Nancy in the chat. She's like, Nate does it all the time because I have the craziness of I'll mute myself and I'll be talking for like 10 minutes and be all animated and people are like, we can't hear anything. So yeah. So it's not just you. It's lawyer tech, I call it.
That's true. And see, that's part of it. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, I won't say much else about it, but the reason that I am asking folks to consider joining the channel is because I want to actually hire somebody to help me optimize this channel, and also who can do the things that distract me when I'm trying to talk, which is basically running the chat and everything like that. So I do appreciate all the supports and the super chats and the super thanks and the memberships and all of those things. Very much appreciated. And as you can tell, they're very much needed because it's very hard for me to walk and chew gum at the same time. But one thing that Nate and I were having a big time talking about, let's go ahead and see if we can add this back to the stage now. This is, let me make it even bigger. This is, I summarized on Twitter for you guys. I went ahead and summarized the comments by Fani Willis that we want to be talking about here because the question is, is she wading into the dangerous waters that Judge McAfee warned her about in the disqualification ruling? She says her reputation is intact. She's not embarrassed. She's not done anything illegal, and we want to make sure we circle back and hit that one for sure. She's a role model for women. Listen, and she's the face of the feminist movement. And on top of that, there's one thing I left out of there because I didn't really have room, because here we are on the beginning of the Holy Christian Week, the Easter week, right? Is she in fact comparing herself in some way to the persecution of Jesus Christ for having gone through the things that she's gone through, I guess, playing the victim from having to defend her actions in court? So is she in fact going there? Is that a bridge too far? So Nate, what do you think about what Fani Willis has said?
Well, excuse me. The first thing I want to do is tackle the whole feminism, race baiting issue. They've been testing this for like the past week, right? First, it was all about race. It's because I'm black and blah, 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 blah. And the first thing, like, no, it's because there was evidence that you had done something improper. And who provided that evidence? It happened to be another black man, Terrence Bradley. Terrence Bradley provided all the evidence and showed everybody where to find all the bodies buried, right? That's Terrence Bradley. He's not white. He happens to be black. And I think the attorney Ashley Merchant, she had a duty to bring those claims to the court. Like, she has to zealously represent her client. Just imagine if you had that type of motion and didn't bring it forward with all that evidence. You had Terrence Bradley, you had Yurley, you had all that evidence to bring forward to say, yes, this may be a problem. So I think on one end, when they started trying to play the race game, now she finds out that doesn't work. And I think she finds out that doesn't work because you have Letitia James, you have Alvin Bragg. Both of those are black district attorneys in New York. And no one's talking about Letitia James having a secret boyfriend and going on elaborate trips. And nobody's talking about the same with Alvin Bragg. So it couldn't be about race. And it's not about gender. So sometimes I think the Democrats, sometimes that's all they have. Instead of having, when you have real criticism for something that's obviously poor, that's the first thing you jump to. And now essentially what it does is make racism something that doesn't exist. Because if everything is racist, even your bad conduct, then nothing is racist. And it also gives covers to true racism. Because when racism does occur, then you'd say, well, no, they're just calling it, it's just the boy who cried wolf. Here's another example of someone claiming racism that's not. So I think Fani has a huge issue with just trying to sell it, because that's what she's trying to sell. And about the statements themselves, she's not being persecuted. What she's being is held accountable for her actions. God forbid if I'm a defendant in Georgia, and I go and they're arresting me for tax evasion or whatever, and they say, "Do you have any receipts?" And I say, "I paid everything with cash." You know what they're going to do? They're going to laugh at me and say, "Yes, make that argument," because they're going to be hamstringing me up. That's the argument that she made. What about the cell phone data? That doesn't mean anything to sell. It's all. But then you're in the next courtroom and the next day in a murder trial saying that same type of cell phone data is good. So I think Fani Willis, I think those statements that she recently made, they have really, really approached the line, because this judge made it very clear. The whole, there was a order of, what do they call it, mendacity?
Odor of mendacity. Yeah. So,
order of mendacity.
All right. So yeah. So she says in that clip we played, she says that she's committed no crimes, which to me tells me she's directly trying to defend herself against some of the claims that were made against her. But she's also, so this isn't just ordinary campaigning. I don't ever hold it against anybody for campaigning when they're a candidate for office. And she does have a Republican and a Democrat challenger. So yeah. She's got a campaign. So she'll say, "Oh, this was just me out campaigning." No, what she was doing, she was responding to Judge McAfee, because he said that when she got up from the witness stand, he said there was an odor. Okay. It was the odor of mendacity. In other words, the stank of the lie. Her testimony just smelled like it was untrue. And if that's the case, he is obliquely accusing her of committing perjury. And it's not only that. Okay. Perjury, of course, is a felony if you're an elected official you have an oath of office like she does, it's a felony offense to violate that oath of office. And one way you violate that oath of office is through committing a felony or a crime. So a violation of oath of office is another 5-year felony in Georgia. And on top of that, remember, we had testimony that was proffered, and that means offered to the court by one of the defense teams, and it would have been the testimony of a lady named Cindy Yeager. Cindy Yeager is the chief assistant district attorney in the Cobb County District Attorney's Office, which is next door to Fulton County geographically. Apparently, Miss Yeager would have come to court and she would have said, I have personal knowledge that Fani Willis got on the phone in September of 2023, called Terrence Bradley on the phone and said, you keep your mouth shut. You don't need to talk to them about, our financial business down here. And I'm paraphrasing, but that was the essence of what was going to be presented if that they had been allowed. So you've got not only the judge saying that she's got the odor when she stands up. Okay, she leaves behind. I could just see it, just wafting in the air, like from following behind her, from the witness stand. So she got the odor of mendacity, and I guess the same would apply for Nathan Wade. But also, you got other people that are accusing her directly or indirectly, and sometimes outright explicitly accusing her of perjury and stuff. So when she says, I didn't commit a crime, that tells me that she is talking about this particular Trump RICO case. She's not out there this is not a campaign type statement. She's not out there just saying, I'm here for the voters and the citizens I'm sworn to protect. She's not saying those kind of things. She's talking about the Trump case. And she's invoking Jesus. She's invoking race. And it's the only thing that's missing is the pulpit. It's the only thing that's missing, because, I could have just seen her saying the same thing in the pulpit of that church, Nate.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, one thing I think is fascinating is that the judge called Nathan Wade a liar. He essentially said Nathan Wade's a liar. He said he lied in his interrogatories or in his divorce, and the reason why he lied was to keep the relationship separate. That's the reason why he had to go. But Fani, he says, has the odor. But if I understand the judge didn't want to call her a liar, but we all know, I think any reasonable person knows that she was lying on that stand. And in Georgia, correct me if I'm wrong, as they said multiple times, if you get a gift over $100 as a public official, you have to report that. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm not a public official, but I was a public employee in New York as a law enforcement officer, as an assistant district attorney, and then as a college professor. And each time every year they give you a document. And that document says, has anyone else given you any gifts over a certain amount? And you list them out. And anything, and it's aggregate too. So let's say if 5 people give you gifts of $20, that's $100. Then you have to report the whole thing as aggregate. Yeah, I got $100 from 5 people. She got something like 20 grand and didn't report a dime. No. It's like it's all over the place. And for her to go out there and pretend that she did nothing wrong and pretend that she is now being the victim of misogyny. That's essentially what the judge said you can't do. Remember, she essentially called them racist at the church. Now she's essentially coming out there, well, I'm the face of the feminist movement because of what? Not racism this time, misogyny. So it seems like we're back in the same place, except instead of using the race card, now it's because she's a woman. She's a strong woman, right?
Well, Deborah in the chat here, I pointed this. Deborah says she's an embarrassment to women, but if you hear her say it, she says she's the face of the feminist movement. Feminism. I mean, I certainly have no way of knowing who speaks for women, because I'm just a guy sitting here. But it seems to me that there's no women in my life that I think want to emulate her, and I don't think she speaks for them or represents them. I'm curious to see what some of the other women in here have to say. But I want to go back to something you just said. You said you were a police officer. I too came out of, I grew up in law enforcement before I became an attorney. And I want to ask you something, Nate. Did you ever have restaurants that gave you free food?
They offered, they did. Definitely offered free food. Yes.
Well, so there was, I guess the statute of limitations is run. There was this there was this truck stop, and I was a reserve deputy sheriff working and I was also in college at the time, but there was a truck stop that had the best Friday night seafood buffet, and they refused to charge us because it was kind of off the beaten path, and they liked having the patrol cars down there. That was some of the best food, but it was probably, at the time, $25 or $25 a head, and they never charged anybody anything. Now, we didn't have to fill out any ethics forms either, but if we had, I probably would have had to declare that. But, this whole thing about Willis, so all of the department heads, so to speak, the decision makers in Fulton County, they have to fill out an ethics form every year, and it talks about aggregate things over $100.
Yeah.
Now, she's a constitutional officer. She's not an employee. She gets paychecks from the county, but she's not hired and fired by the county, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So that's why this ethics board said that they felt they didn't have any jurisdiction to address that particular complaint. But it's still the spirit of the ethics issue that matters. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you are the elected DA, whether the county ethics board has authority over you or not, the better practice, the right thing to do would be to abide by their rules and follow their rules, and not just say, I can do whatever the hell I want and I don't have to sign your form and turn it in kind of thing, because that's just arrogance. And it's the same arrogance we saw in that video just now, that clip from yesterday to CNN. It's the same arrogance that we see from her on the witness stand.
Oh my God! Don't even get me started with that. At that point, when she number two things, I think sometimes, I think when you go down the barrel of you telling one lie to cover up another lie to cover up another lie, it just snowballs on you. Like when she ran into the courtroom, so she runs into the courtroom right after Wade finished talking, and she's like, "Oh, I heard people screaming out in the hallway that he's finished, so I ran down the courtroom because I thought logically I was next." Absolutely not. She was watching every minute of that testimony and got up there and lied right in front of everyone. And my whole thing is that I think, and again, I'm going to speak as a professional myself. The problem is that I have agency to do the right and wrong thing. So if I go out there and do the wrong thing, it's not because some evil white racist is out there trying to hold me accountable. It's because I did the wrong thing. Just like Fani. Fani is a person who is she's a lawyer. She has all this experience. And when she does the wrong thing, she should just accept the fact that it's not about race. It's not about gender. It's about what you did. And I keep bringing it back. Look at Letitia James. No one who the Trump team hates more is Attorney General of New York, Letitia James. Number 2 on that list is probably going to be the New York County DA, Alvin Braggs, who are both Black. And then Fani Willis comes number 3 because they're all prosecuting them. And you don't see these type of attacks on Letitia James. Why? Because there's no evidence. Nobody's saying stuff to say stuff. You don't see these attacks on Alvin Braggs. Why? Because nobody's saying this stuff to say stuff. You need reasonable suspicion, at least, or something to tie you to those claims. And
they need an Ashley Merchant up there, apparently, to be the Aaron Brockovich of it all.
to find this information. But if there's nothing, then nobody's saying it. So for Fani Willis to say that this is some racial attack against her because she is Black, it's obviously not the case. And it cheapens the struggle for people, because what it does, it makes it seem like every claim of disproportionate treatment is just BS. And sometimes there are true claims, but when every time someone like Fani Willis gets in a little trouble, instead of just owning it and saying, "Hey, I had this relationship, I messed up, but now we're going to move forward," instead of her saying, "Well, it's the other people's fault because of the way I look," we all know that's BS. And why do we know it's BS? Because we saw it for ourselves. We watched all the evidence for ourselves. And just like everybody in this chat should know, and just like I know everybody on the left knows, it's not BS. What she did was wrong, no matter what her skin color was and what's in between her legs.
And I want to address Jennifer's question, and then I want to go back. I want to play that clip again. Now that we've got it's like 2,300 and some change people in here. I want to play it again because I want to continue dissecting it. It's very important that we understand exactly what she said. But Jennifer Jennifer asks, what if she loses the election? What happens to her pending cases? Well, the short answer is that the new district attorney, hypothetical new district attorney, would take over all her pending cases and would have to make a decision on what to do with any one of them. And, we as lawyers who work in the criminal justice area, we see this from time to time. You have prosecutors leave and prosecutors go, somebody else takes the case. And if you don't like what one prosecutor says, just wait. And when you get a new one, maybe you'll get a different answer. So the short answer is that a new prosecutor would have to decide what, if anything, to do. Now, if she gets tossed from the case, but doesn't lose the election, then she stays on as DA, but the state of Georgia, through something called the Prosecuting Attorneys Council. Now, this is a question you didn't ask, but you're getting answered. And this is what happens when lawyers get a microphone. Anyway, I'm answering the question that wasn't asked. The Prosecuting Attorneys Council will have to decide whether, well, first off, they got to find another prosecutor in Georgia who'd be willing to take the case. But like, let's say I'm a prosecutor in the next county over and they say, hey, Holloway, you want to take this case? I'm going to have to think long and hard about it, because even if I felt that it was a righteous prosecution, I don't know that I would think I would have to start all over again because of the taint, if you will, of all of the stuff that's happened with Wade and Willis and everything that's happened so far. Because if they have that kind of a conflict of interest, then it makes sense that that we just got to start over and cure that taint, if you will, by doing a fresh indictment. It's a mess. The whole thing's a giant mess. You got something you want to say, Nate?
No, I agree with you totally, and like, because this has happened to me when I was working. I was the Bronx DA, so it was a changeover from the old DA who had been there for like 40 years to another district attorney. And some of those cases, you reevaluate and you say whether you're going to move forward or not. But one of the things that I also think about the way this whole I think the political nature of this case is going to be an issue because, number one, you're talking about huge amounts of resources that you're going to need because you got 19 co-defendants, right? So you got a huge amounts of resources that you're going to need. So whether they're going to, number one, have those resources and wanting to be able to expend that political capital to get resources to prosecute this case. And then second, there's also that political, whether it goes to a Republican DA or a Democratic DA, because I know in Georgia, most of the DAs down there happen to be on the R side. So I think a Republican DA is going to have a different view of this prosecution than the Democratic DA, and that's when you really start getting into whether this prosecution itself is good, because the prosecution, if it depends on your political leanings whether you prosecute this case or not, then I think you may have I think you have even more issues with moving forward. So I do think her staying on the case, essentially, from my perspective, keeps the case alive, because I think if this case gets transferred, if somebody else does want to take it, it's going to be hard for them to move forward.
That's why I found what RICO says here. And by the way, RICO is not a crime. This case is an albatross. Nobody would want it except a Soros prosecutor, of course. And this is, like I say, this is an albatross. And even if I were the kind of prosecutor that would be of the mind to want to push it, I might just decline it because, look, I just can't go back and fix the mess that's been made by these. So now that we've got 2,500 people in here now, let's take a minute and revisit why we are here talking. Here's Fani Willis yesterday talking to CNN.
I don't feel like my reputation needs to be reclaimed. Let's say it for the record. I'm not embarrassed by anything I've done. I guess my greatest crime is I had a relationship with a man, but that's not something that I find embarrassing in any way. And I know that I have not done anything that's illegal. And so I don't feel like my reputation needs to be reclaimed. And when I tell you the outpouring of women, and I'll tell you this, especially African-American women who will just say, we are so proud, you are such a good representative of us. But I would be lying to say it's only African American women. I have had Caucasian women, Asian women, Indian women. I told Jeff one day I didn't think I was the face of the feminist movement, but somehow I became it. And I think that women feel like women are treated differently when they're professionals, and they're proud to see someone that is strong and trying to do the right job. Certainly flawed, like every human being is flawed. My father has a saying, only one perfect man walked the face of the earth, and they crucified him. I am not a perfect human being, but what I am is a hardworking human being and a human being that loves the community I serve and who understands this seat does not belong to me. It belongs to the people, and as long as I'm here, I'm going to try to do the job in a way that's honorable.
Can I want to respond to the point she made. I did nothing wrong. Let's really think about the facts of this case. She hires her boyfriends, who she's banging from 2019, from all the witnesses, right? From Terrence Bradley, from Yurdi, who she was staying in an apartment. She's been banging him from that point in time. She hires him, pays him $650,000. He then gets this money and takes her on these elaborate vacations all across wherever, right? Going this way, that way, this way, right? She's supposed to report this stuff. She reports none of it. Then she gets on the stand and then has the nerve to say, she paid back that $20,000 in cash from getting $50 or $100 deposits from the local Publix supermarket. Like none of that even makes any close to sense. And then her boyfriend, literally, who was married at the time, let's not forget that he's married. That's like a whole other thing. But he's married at the time. So what does he do? He then gets on a stand. And not gives him a stand. He then, in his divorce filings, straight up lies and says he's not in this extramarital relationship, gets called out by the judge. He has to be removed for the case because he's lying. And she says she's done everything. Her only issue was dating a man. No, your issue was hiring your boyfriend and paying and getting these elaborate gift kickbacks of about $20,000 at a minimum, and then lying to the court about it. That's what it is. And now, before, when the court says, well, listen, don't go through the church and say that this is all about racism, because it's not. It's all about your conduct. She then goes out now at another public meeting and says, now, you know what? He's right. It's not about racism. It's about sexism. Like it doesn't seem like she's learned her lesson at all. It seems like it seems like she's trying to play at both sides. She's trying to essentially lose the case, but want to be, if they take the case, it's because first it was because I'm black, but that's not working. It's because I'm a woman, and now I'm the face of feminism. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous on its face. I'm sorry. I know that was a long rant, but it's crazy.
No. And so, I want to bring this back up because this is my cheat sheet, so to speak, to remind myself of what. So she says her reputation is intact. So I think that there's an argument to be made that her reputation is in fact in shreds and that she has no credibility left whatsoever. She says she's not embarrassed. Well, I think she should be embarrassed, because anytime you step up out of a witness chair and you leave behind the stank odor of untruthfulness or the odor of mendacity, and by the way, the judge wrote a scathing order. He may not have disqualified her, but he wrote a scathing order that basically called her out for all kinds of things, including the illegal conduct, unethical conduct of going in that church pulpit and calling a defendant and his counsel racist. You can't do that. That's prosecutorial misconduct of a type. She says she's done nothing wrong, done nothing illegal. We've talked about that. A role model for women. I want to hear more from the women in the chat. Is she the role model for you or your daughters? And is she in fact the face of the feminist movement? Guys, I mean, I can't begin to. This is just stunning. I can't really understand the mindset behind someone who would say so much in a 2-minute video segment or clip, to a TV reporter. So I just want to go through those things. What do you folks in the chat think about that?
Well, two people I want to call out for the chat. My boy Viva Viva is in the chat.
Oh.
He's the Viva and Barnes, and then the lead attorney. Oh my God, the lead attorney's in there. So they've been following the case too. So these are the two of the OGs from the YouTube lawyers. So there it is.
All right. So it leads crazily, her reputation is intact with much of the population here in Atlanta. Of course, there's a lot of identity politics that explain it. And so I want to respond, and then Nate, you can, but you can respond. But I actually agree, with certainly with her base. What she said is throwing red meat to her political base. They support her 100%, despite the fact that she stood in the pulpit of a Christian church and admitted to essentially having an affair with a man who was married. And by the way, Nathan Wade, for him to get on the stand and say, if he's not married, he doesn't need to. Why is he going through a current divorce that is still not settled? But he took the stand, and when he was asked directly, "Are you married?" he said no. Yeah. And he went on to try to explain it by saying, in his mind, his marriage was over years ago. Well, if you're not married, then why are you in a divorce right now? Why do you have a pending divorce in Cobb County Superior Court? So anyway, she gets in the well of this church, and she stands there and she says, she's not a perfect person and all. Of course she's not. None of us are, right? But she's basically there, admitting to having an affair that she's hiding from people with a married man who, according to the judge and others, in the court proceeding, is possibly even lying about his income to his wife up there. And these people just embrace her. And I understand that Christianity and the idea of forgiveness and all this, but that doesn't seem to be the right kind of place to go when you want to talk about committing adultery with a married man. So, Nate, what do you think?
Yeah,
where is the right place to go when you yourself talk about committing adultery with a married man?
But I think that's it shows you the sheep versus those who think critically. Because you're right, I didn't even think about that. But she literally goes to the church pulpit and complains they're racist because they're calling me out for for having sex with a married man while he was married, right? They're calling me out because and everybody's clapping like seals. Ooh, yeah, it's wrong. I think if people just think and look at what happened in this particular case, there is no race issue. But I think the people in who she's catering to have been so conditioned to think that anything negative that happens to a public official who happens to be of a particular skin color or gender, then that negativity has some indicia of racism or sexism or whatever you can label it on. And it's great for votes. But I think one thing the court made it very clear is that it's improper to do because you have criminal defendants here who deserve a fair jury. Now, just like when she was in the church calling them essentially racist, now you're out here calling them sexist. And that needs to be taken care of. And I'm hoping that the appeals court remedies this and say, just stop talking about the case. And the funny part about it is she didn't talk about any other case. This is like the one case that that she has to feel like she has to get out. So
I predicted this, I don't know, a week or so ago on this channel. I said that, she's not going to be able to, even though the judge told her these are dangerous waters and maybe it's time to put a gag order on you. I predicted that she wasn't going to be able to stop. And I've been perfectly vindicated yet again in this case. Not only is, but I said, maybe she's at least smart enough to not say things herself and just use some surrogates. But no, she comes right out and she does it. And she's clearly talking about this case. And guess what, guys? The judges on the Georgia Court of Appeals, they watch the news. Yeah. They're probably not, they may even be in this chat. I don't know right now, but they definitely watch the news and they see what's going on. And here's the thing. It's going to be offered to a group of, it's called a panel of 3 judges, and it only takes one to agree to hear the interlocutory or pretrial appeal. And if that one judge says, okay, then it's going to go up. And so we're going to have the Court of Appeals decide whether she's disqualified. there are two things I think that are stronger, in my opinion, basis for disqualification than the conflict of interest. One is lying to the court.
That's a big one.
Perpetrating a fraud on the court, because if you perpetrate a fraud on the court, you not only can you be prosecuted, you can be disbarred, and someone who's disbarrable is not, the right person to be leading any kind of case. So that's, I think, a good basis that you could toss her from the case. But the one that was pled by the parties that is sort of more in line with what we're talking about today is this out of court statements about the defense or about the case. Prosecutors are not supposed to try the case outside the courtroom, and when they venture to do so, they get in trouble. And our courts in Georgia have not given a lot of good guidance on what it takes to disqualify a prosecutor on this. This is an opportunity for the Court of Appeals and perhaps the Georgia Supreme Court to give some really good guidance and say, look, this is, if ever there was a case, this is it. When you walk into the well of the court of the church and you say, Mr. Roman and his lawyer are racist scumbags for accusing me of something that I'm guilty of in the first place. And by the way, when you do that, she's talking. When she's in that church, she's talking to the potential jurors. These are citizens and residents of Fulton County. They're the ones that are going to be getting the jury summons for this case if it ever gets that far. And she knows it. And so that shows terrible judgment. It shows almost a maliciousness on her part to go out and purposely poison the jury pool. And if ever there was a basis to toss a prosecutor from a case for something as egregious as that, this is it. So I think the Court of Appeals, or perhaps even the Georgia Supreme Court, is going to toss her from the case. My goodness, lead attorney, that's very generous of you. Thank you. The red caught my eye. I think he did that, Nate, because he wanted me to shut up. I was on a rant there.
Now, Lead is my brother, so thank you so much, Lead.
Yeah. Nate, what are your thoughts, buddy?
Yeah, no, you know what? I'm in total agreement. I think I understand the motivations to want to essentially defend yourself, but I do think that actually, I wanted to ask you a question. You got Terrence Bradley, who I don't think there's any doubt he violated if attorney-client privilege, if that means anything. There's so many ethical violations for him. I don't know how he keeps his law license. I'm just going to be honest with you. Nathan Wade, the judge in the order said he obviously lied in his interrogatories to the court, came to the court. He's got issues. And Fani Willis, I think, just the ethics of the extrajudicial statements, we paid him back in cash. And I think the obvious lies, I think that puts her in some jeopardy. So do you think because I know there are a couple of bar complaints, Lead actually covered them, but do you think there's anything's going to come from this? Because these are a lot of attorneys doing things that we as attorneys would say, this is, your license is in jeopardy if you do stuff like this. And it seems like they've all done it. And, what ramifications is it going to be? Because even without the criminal arena, there's still standards and practices at the bar.
Yeah, so I'm glad you talked about that bar complaint, because on my channel, and I want folks to remember, if they can, go back and check it out. It's a recent video that I did that covered the bar complaint, the big one, at least the big one that I know about. It's a very well drafted complaint by a guy named Stephen Kramer, no relation to Courtney Kramer, who's also running for DA. Mr. Kramer sent it to me and gave me permission to publish it. I put it on my Twitter feed, almost all of it. The only thing I cut out was some things that maybe had an address on it, but it's got a table of contents and everything. This guy was really, really prepared. He's not a lawyer, but he certainly is very thorough. He cites, to the bar rules, and he cites a whole number of them. But he some of his strongest points, quite frankly, are about the duty of candor to the court. Same thing that we've been hammering on. Look, not only can't you lie under oath, if you're a lawyer, you can't even lie when you talk to the judge or when you file a pleading. And the people that work for Fani Willis, if they know that their boss is perpetrating a fraud on the court, they are duty and ethically bound not to participated in it either, which makes me wonder, where is Anna Cross?
Anna Cross.
Is she completely MIA? Is she ever coming back? We don't know. She's also an independent contractor, and her excuse was, well, maybe I've got some other business, some other cases, some other clients that need my attention. But who knows if I'm coming? We'll see. Maybe she's coming back. Maybe she's not. But maybe also, just maybe, she has the idea that this is probably something I don't want to participate in anymore because my name is now associated with this shit, and I don't want it because it makes me look bad. Right? I think that's that's pretty reasonable. Anyway, I think I lost my train of thought. So Nate, what do you think?
Well, I think you're all right, because I didn't even think about the ramifications for everyone else who has to defend Fani under this umbrella, because like you're saying, Anna Cross and all those other prosecutors, they also have a duty of candor to the court too. And when things just kind of, when things are obviously, like it was obvious Nathan Wade wasn't being honest in his documents, right? It just couldn't be true. But also too, for Terrence Bradley was the one that filed those documents, those interrogatories. So if he's filing interrogatories saying that on one end, he's filing interrogatories saying that Nathan Wade didn't have an extramarital relationship, but then going behind his back and texting and telling everyone, well, he did, and he knows for a fact he did, then again, I just don't know how he keeps his law license, right? This is intentionally lying to the court in all these particular different ways. And again, my issue with the judge's ruling, and I've said this even on my channel, is that when someone's obviously lying, I think the judge could have easily taken it and said, well, because that's essentially what he said about Nathan Wade. He said, because I know that you lied about this, you lied to keep the relationship secret to the point where you lacked candor to the tribunal, then either you have to go or Fani can't have the case anymore. And obviously he resigned. So I think with that type of damning evidence against Nathan Wade, I think he should be in front of the bar as soon as possible. One other thing I wanted to ask quickly is that Terrence Bradley, myself, Lead, and we all pontificate on why, but why would he just give up all his clients' secrets? Because I was watching an interview with Ashley Merchant, and she said that they were communicating, and then she said that Terrence Bradley got a call from not Nathan Wade, but from someone like a close friend of Nathan Wade's.
I'm looking it up. I'm
a friend of both of them, right?
Yeah, hang on. I've got it. Keep going.
She said she had gotten that Bradley had gotten a contact from a mutual friend of theirs, reminding him of his attorney-client privilege before he testified. That to me seems a little bit like witness tampering. Like, hey, I'm not gonna tell you directly, but I'm gonna have a third party tell you. Kind of really shady on that point. But then Terrence Bradley then goes and, from my perspective, why would he put his law license on the line and expose himself to all of this, right? He's really exposed himself, I think, to losing his career, to losing his license. And I would never hire that guy as an attorney, because he's literally, this guy was I'm assuming was one of his best friends. He gave up all his secrets for nothing. So what's his motivation here?
Yeah. So as Cindy points out, and as I was able to find on my text yesterday, this came up in the replies to a video I did yesterday, and there's just so many names and so many pieces to this. Guys, you need a chalkboard or a whiteboard or something to go ahead and So there's a guy named Gabe Banks, who's an attorney that was subpoenaed by Ashley Merchant, and his wife also works for Fani Willis. And so the theory is that maybe Mr. Banks had contacted, I think maybe there's some testimony too, Banks had contacted Wade and not Wade, Bradley, and said something to the effect of, remember your privilege or something along, and maybe he considered that to be a threat. Is that where you're coming from?
Yeah. That because I know Ashley Merchant she gave an interview on CNN where she mentioned that Terrence Bradley was cooperating, And then he gets this message from Wade about, remember there's a privilege issue. And then he clammed up. And then she even said that she mentioned in the CNN interview that he had essentially told her, he's got to worry about his law license. So that is, that seems like how else can you clam up a witness? So it's a fascinating introspection on, number one, I would have never thought the DA's office would be involved in anything close to this. But, unfortunately, here we are. And I also want to say this, I said this on Lead because I was on Lead Attorneys' stream maybe about a week ago about this. Ashley Merchant is definitely, this is all her baby. She did the work. She got the information. I think a lot of people are calling her Trump attorney. She represents Roman. But she did a great job in finding this information, putting it all together, and making it so digestible so we can all just digest it. Because that's usually a lot of times the thing as an attorney, you get all this information and you're trying to make it digestible for somebody else to understand. And she made it so digestible where it was clear that everything that's happened. So,
well, it didn't help when this whole thing broke, because if you remember in January when she filed this motion, she says in there that they were having this affair. And she says all kinds of things, but the gist of it that made the big splash was that she was having an affair. And all the media, the local paper here in Atlanta and all the media, the way they reported it was, that she's making this allegation without any proof.
Yes,
okay?
That's exactly what they said.
In the own document, she says that she's prepared to bring witnesses. And I know Ash, I've known her for almost 30 years, and a lawyer who is an ethical and honest lawyer, and she is, if nothing else, ethical and honest. I can personally attest to that. They're not going to put something like that in a legal pleading if it's not true. First off, you can get disbarred for it.
Yes.
But secondly, if you lose your credibility as an attorney, you've got nothing else, right? Because you can't walk in. If I walk into a courtroom and I tell a judge, the sky is blue today, the judge hopefully will believe that the sky is blue, because that's just how much we value our own word. Our word should be good. If I give you my word, it's going to be good. That's just an underlying principle. We've relied on it for as long as lawyers have been a profession, right? It's just, it's a bedrock principle. It's sacrosanct. And if Ashley Merchant puts in a pleading that they're having an affair, she has a good faith basis for saying it. And for Fani Willis or anybody else to come to court and say she's a liar, well, that was just offensive, because anybody that knows Ashley knows that couldn't be true. But anyway, the news kept saying, well, she has no evidence. And then so we're on bated breath. Okay, how is she going to respond to this? What's Willis going to say? Because everybody knew in the legal community, it's almost like this unspoken secret that she was having this affair. And so I knew that when she responded, she was either not going to respond or she was going to respond and admit it. Okay. So I wasn't surprised when she admitted it. So that shut up the media, at least for the time being. But what I didn't expect is that she was going to say that it only started in 2022. And for those of us on the ground here who, maybe we don't have personal knowledge, but it's kind of like almost like a high school social dynamic, in the criminal justice or criminal lawyer community. It's a pretty small community. We all kind of know what's what, and everybody kind of knew that there was something going on with them. And I was scratching my head saying, I'm not so sure I believe that 2022 business, because it seems to me I've been hearing about this for a lot longer. And so then that's what the big fight became about. And now we know, because we have cell phone trackers and we have Robin Yurdy, who's an eyewitness, we know that it did in fact start all the way back in 2019. And, so here we are. The question that you asked about why would Bradley be talking to Merchant about it? There's an obligation to look. I'm gonna be an advocate for Terrence Bradley. We as lawyers have an obligation to correct things that if our client says something that's not true, we have an obligation to correct it, right? Maybe that's what he was trying to do. What do you think, Nate?
To be honest, because at first I was like, at first I was like, I just don't understand it. Then I saw he had the issue with the sexual harassment stuff. So we was like, well, maybe this might be a honeypot situation. But then we were like, no. After we heard Ashley Merchant describe the situation about, you know, how he was just saying this kind of in an open forum to anybody who would listen. And then she started taking notes. She was like, oh, wow, this is all good stuff. Then it was like, okay, so it's not that. But then it just came like, was he upset that he had been kicked out of the law firm? There had to be some reason that he would just, because don't forget, just so everybody understands how much Terrence Bradley is involved in this. Ashley Merchant got all the information to write the motion from Terrence Bradley. Robin Yorty, for instance, because she kept asking him, how can she verify stuff? Because just like any good attorney, just because somebody gives you information, if you can't verify it's coming from a good source, or they have the basic knowledge for it, you can't use it. So in their communications, you see, she's like, you know, how can I find it? It was Terrence Bradley who said, Robin Yorty, I know she was staying at a girlfriend's house. Oh, look for this person. Look for this person. This is where you find this. And when you look through the text messages, you see he is actively like a little investigator trying to find all the pieces for Ashley Merchant. And she found them and put them together. So at the end of the day, it either has to be that this guy was trying to pick a bone or a beef with Nathan Wade behind the scenes. But I think it all comes to fruition when Ashley Merchant files that motion. I don't think he thought that I'm going to be called to testify for this because I am the source of all this information. This is not like, you know, Deep Throat in Watergate, right? Who gave you all this? Who gave you all this? She was called. You know, it's just like in a poker game. The judge was like, okay, call, show me your hand, and she showed the hand. And then I think when he got, and I think, you know, he got caught up, but for him to give all of this up, risking his license, risking all this. There's something more here that I think we're not missing. And at first I thought his motivations may have been something else, but to find out that he was in a room just telling everybody this, and Ashley Merchant happened to be there writing it down, then that changed the dynamic. I don't know. Maybe he just didn't care anymore. Who knows? But I know Ashley recently said in her CNN interview that that he had told her that he was now worried about his license going forward. So, you know, again, why would that be?
Would that be because Gabe Banks said, hey, called him up and said, hey, remember, would that be because he was threatened in some way that caused him to have that worry?
Yeah, but that's what she said. She said because, you know, after that's when he was worried, and he was worried when he was going up there. Because I'm thinking Wade would make an issue of it. Wade would say, well, hey, listen, you were this, and he's going to file that complaint to keep him quiet. So yeah, so I think he was bullied, and I think unfortunately too, a lot of that attorney-client privilege, like a lot of stuff he was saying was privilege. We found out wasn't privilege. He was just saying privilege to try to avoid answering questions.
Trying to avoid answering questions.
So it's all messed up here. And I think Terrence Bradley, again, from my perspective, Terrence Bradley, Nathan Wade, their law licenses should be gone, right? They've just totally just lied to the court multiple times. This is not just one or two, right? You got to have some penalty for that. Fani Willis, the judge went almost there with calling her a liar, but essentially didn't. So I think she still has a little wiggle room left, but I think Terrence Bradley and Nathan Wade, I think they have serious problems when it comes to the ethics committee.
Well, I think King Solomon, also known as Judge McAfee, tried his best to split the baby. But here's the thing: he didn't use the word. He didn't say the words "she committed perjury." He said she left behind, you know, the stinky odor of a lie, and so it's almost the same thing. But to me, that's just unsatisfying, because if she's lied and you're the judge, then by God, do something about it. You know, if I'm the judge and you lie to me about anything, I'm going to be really upset about it, because you just can't do that and get away with it, especially in a high profile, in any case, but certainly one that's being televised on the world stage. By not taking some action, she has made him look weak and impotent for the duration of the case. She has emasculated the man because he did not take any meaningful action against her. He wrote a strongly worded letter, and that's about it. And lawyers know that strongly worded letters may sound great for the person reading it, but they don't mean shit. And so all he did was say, It smelled like she was lying, but even though Robin Yurdy was an eyewitness to the hugging and the smooching and the carrying on in 2019, there was not enough context there. What kind of context do you want, Judge?
I thought that too.
Did you want them to say, okay, yes, I saw her reach over seductively and unzip his pants? I mean, how much context do you really, really need? Because, this is we're joking, but I'm not really either, because Robin Yurdy, she shelled down the corn, as we say here in Michigan. She said, look, this is what I saw. I saw them, a public display of affection.
Yes.
Okay. And there's only one thing that means, right? It's either a one night stand booty call or they're having a romantic affair, and it started in 2019. He had no reason not to find that she was a liar. He got almost there, but he couldn't quite cross the finish line, so to speak, with it. And we certainly, and I've never in my life, well, maybe it was a young lawyer, but certainly as a seasoned one now, I never hold out hope that a judge is going to do the right thing. And of course, so I wasn't disappointed, because I didn't expect the judge to do the right thing. But I'm gonna violate my own rule. I hope the Court of Appeals does the right thing and sets this, that, and the Court of Appeals says, no, there's enough here to disqualify her, and goes ahead and rules accordingly. And by the way, I just remembered what I forgot about the bar complaint when I lost my train of thought. The bar complaint process, although it's confidential, if the person filing it gives me a copy or anybody else a copy and says you can publish it, then you can publish it. But the results of it, what the bar does with it, that's all confidential, and we will not know what, if anything, the bar does unless or until they take some punitive action, and not just any punitive action. It has to be public punitive action, because there are some sanctions that are non-public. So we won't know the results of it unless or until they do something public, and it could be quite some time.
Yeah. And well, I think a couple of people were asking, is this good for Trump and his team, and Roman and his team? And I think this is the best possible outcome as of right now. Other than disqualification, obviously you want, but I think this outcome is great, because if an appeals court does take this appeal, that's adding another 4 to 6 months to this case, because you got a brief, you got all this stuff. So now you're not getting this before the election. This trial isn't going to happen before the election. And if Trump is elected, then it's good. Then this kind of holds on for another 4 years. And if Fani's not there in 4 years, then you don't have any issues. So I think this was kind of the second best outcome for the defendants in this particular case. If she is bounced, then a couple of people were asking, well, what about the people who already pleaded guilty, the people who already flipped?
Well, right? This is in the rearview mirror. They're regretting it, because they can all file a motion to withdraw their guilty plea, and quite frankly, I'm surprised somebody hasn't already done it, because I sure would have done it. But if this whole thing gets tossed, or Willis gets tossed, they're going to be regretting it. I don't blame them for cutting their losses and saying, you know what, I don't have millions and millions of dollars. Especially some of the older ones, they want to spend their golden years and the money that they've earned in their lifetime. They don't want to spend it dealing with Fani Willis. They want to just get out and take their misdemeanor or whatever and move on. I certainly get that, but as a practical matter, once you pull the ripcord early and plead guilty, and then 6 months later or a year, whatever, Ashley Merchant comes along and reveals something like this, you've got to be questioning the wisdom of your decision, yes. and maybe want to withdraw your plea. What would you do, Nate? I want to ask you, what would you do if you were, say, just pick your defendant, any one of them, Jenna Ellis, for example. If you were Jenna, would you want to withdraw your plea?
I would want to, but the allocution would be the problem, right? You've stood up in open court, you've explained all the wrongdoings and everything, and now you're saying, I want to withdraw it, right? Because you go through the elements. I did this because I've taken so many pleas in criminal court, right? Plead guilty, and we go through the elements. And you say, I did this. How did you do this? Blah, 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 blah. So now you're pulling that back in hopes to. So yeah, because I think another DA, unless you get another DA who sees the nonsense and says, okay, listen, we're just gonna let this all go. But I would be looking to pull back the police, especially now, until at least, because we have to at least see this through. Second, I really honestly, and this is the problem with what McAfee did. I can't square his reasoning. Essentially, he says Nathan Wade is a liar, and Nathan Wade is a liar about the relationship. And because Nathan Wade's a liar about the relationship, that shows that he was lying to stay on the case, to continue on. And that, in terms, is the reason why he had to go, either he or the district attorney's office. But I think the lies that they put up for Nathan Wade are the same lies that Fani Willis is accused of saying. So in other words, he tried to split in a way with saying, well, I know Wade's a liar, but I'm not going to say Fani Willis lied, even though they were talking about the same thing. You know what I mean? It's kind of that splitting the big, which I do think is which I think the appeals court has a lot to go on. But Jenna Ellis and Jenna Ellis and the ones that pleaded guilty, I think they jumped the gun. This is why you shouldn't jump the gun. But I also think it's going to be tough for them to get over that allocution, because they went through pains. I watched Jenna Ellis. She went through painstaking details on giving up everything. And, it's just going to be tough to come back from that.
Fair point. Now, Maggie points out that a district attorney named Seth Williams in Philadelphia got 5 years in prison for much, much less. I'm not personally familiar with that case,
Okay.
but you remember I don't know if anybody even around here or in this chat or even you's old enough to remember the Duke LaCrosse case. Does
Yes.
that ring a bell?
Yes.
So didn't that guy, what was his name? Nifong? Didn't he go to jail?
He did because but that was he had Brady violations. It was like ridiculous. He had so much that he had done. So yeah, I think he went to jail. That Duke LaCrosse case was crazy.
Yeah, but the general point is that only rarely do prosecutors actually commit crimes in an effort to prosecute people for crimes or alleged crimes.
Yeah.
So fortunately this doesn't happen all the time, but it seems like when it happens, it's like it's a whopper. Just like this, I think this is a tremendously big issue. I think what they have done is just absolutely grotesque in not only in the substance, but just in the size of it. It's just insane. Yes. How badly they've botched this. But only rarely do prosecutors who get caught with their pants down, no pun intended, when do they get prosecuted? And I've got a problem with that, because prosecutors ought to be held to a much higher. In fact, they are held to different ethical standard. Their ethical standard is to do justice, not just to get a conviction, but to do justice. And that might mean dismissing a case, and it might mean throwing somebody under the jail forever, but it means doing the right thing at all times. And prosecutors so often fail to do that, and nothing ever happens to them. Nothing. They get held accountable for almost zero when they do these, sometimes commit crimes or do other bad things.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to, I've got lots of prosecutor friends that I'm not trying to paint with such a broad brush. And I want to make it clear, this is limited. This is limited in scope. This doesn't happen all the time.
No,
but it's just happened in this case in such a spectacular way.
Yeah. And generally we would be talking about this, but we wouldn't have real evidence to suggest it. But here the evidence is so overwhelming. So, but again, I think McAfee, like you keep saying, King Solomon McAfee, I think he did his best impression of splitting the baby. But I think, unfortunately, what he did was he actually split the baby. And in the Solomon case, he didn't actually split the baby. It was a tool, a threat to split the baby to actually find justice. But here he was like, no, I'm going to actually saw the baby in half and give each side one. And that's not the right answer. So,
well, it accomplishes nothing. It's like saying, okay, they did bad stuff. She went to the church and made those statements in the pulpit, and that was wrong. And it was wrong for them to be having this affair and to be hiding it and all this stuff. And so there's appearance of impropriety. So one of the others got to go, but it just didn't solve anything. He came close to identifying the problem. And in fact, with regard to what we call the forensic misconduct, which is the out of court statements calling Merchant a racist and all that, he got that one right. He says, I find that to be he didn't use the word unlawful, but it was improper. He found that to be legally improper, but he exacted no penalty for it. So,
Yes.
it's like it's like if you have kids, right, and you identify your kids misbehaving or breaking your rules or something, and you tell them, if you do this, there's going to be a consequence, and then you don't give them a consequence, then they're going to do it again the next time. And it's the same kind of thing here. And it's just left. What it does to me is it highlights that he's a young judge, literally young, and he's also brand new. And of course, he had this mess of a case dropped in his lap like 2 months into the job, and now he's trying to do the best he can to get through it. But I think a more experienced judge would have taken more meaningful action, because I think with that wisdom would come the knowledge that you've got to maintain the integrity of your courtroom. And if you have people lying, and if you have people perpetrating a fraud on your court, you've got to come down hard, as hard as you can.
Yeah, just for the integrity of the courtroom. And it kind of, as a judge, and I think people need to really understand this, as a judge, if you allow her to do this, and then someone else comes and does something similar, then it's going to be harder for you to hold that person accountable, because they're going to say, well, listen, you didn't do it this time. And then if somebody else does it, and it just makes the problem worse, instead of having a fine line and saying this is unacceptable conduct. And I think you're right, and totally, is that Fani, I think, even now with this recent statement that you just played, I don't think she's learned her lesson. And I think at the end of the day, she needs to, if she was serious about prosecuting this case, she would say nothing about, listen, I can't talk about this particular case, because who talks about pending litigation? I can't talk about this case, but you know what? We saw what happened. I'm glad we're at where we're at, and we're looking to move forward. That's it. That's all she had to say. But she needs to tell people that what they saw and all the evidence that they observed is not really what it is. It's really something else. And again, it's and I always say this, and please don't hate me for saying this, but the Democrats, I think it's like breathing. Whenever you get challenged with something that you did that was wrong, let's go right to the wheelbarrow. Identity politics. Can we use race? Can we use sex? Can we use gender? What can we use to deflect? And she used two of them. She's on her second one, and that's where we're at. So,
all right, Nate, we've been going at it over an hour now, and but before we go, I want to just switch gears. Yesterday, we talked some about the YSL, the Young Thug RICO prosecution. If you've been following that some here in Atlanta, you familiar with that one?
Yes, I have it. Well, one thing, how many lawyers are going to get arrested in this case? Because there's like 3 lawyers have been arrested. The bailiff's been arrested. The
jurors. I mean, the jurors were being threatened with they were making the judge. But jurors who didn't want to spend 4 or 5 years on jury duty were forced to write essays, about why jury duty is so important. And it's go back and watch what I did yesterday, because we talked a lot about the YSL trial and all it's just another embarrassment, but it's a RICO case. It's another gigantic case brought by Fani Willis, because she is in love with, other than Nathan Wade, she's in love with RICO, and she just wants to create these giant cases that are so big that the courts literally just choke on them. They're so big the courts can't digest it. But something happened, and by the way, Grandma points out we need 3,387 likes. Yes, we do. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and join. But Nate, before we go, I want you to experience something that happened. And you might have to turn it up, because this volume might be a little low, but I want you to experience what one of Fani Willis's witnesses said to the judge under oath just the other day. Here it comes.
Man, can I get a water or something? I'm so high right now, y'all. I'm about to go to sleep on y'all now. I ain't gonna tell you no lie.
Yes, you may. We're gonna take a break. Hang
I'm so high, I'm about to go to sleep on y'all. Now that's a state's witness, and so Fani Willis's team is bringing in all these witnesses who most of the time she has no freaking clue what they're going to say. And if I'm a prosecutor, one thing that I'm not ever going to do is put a witness on the stand, first off, who's high, but I'm not going to put one on the stand if I don't know what the hell he's going to say.
Yeah.
So can you, I mean, is this the quality of prosecution that you would expect if you're a voter and a citizen of Fulton County, that these are the witnesses that your prosecutor is going to bring to court?
No, obviously not. And I think, unfortunately, this is probably somebody who doesn't want to be there. But I think you have to be honest with the court and say, hey, listen, this person's not ready to testify right now. But maybe it's all they got. But you're right, though. That's an embarrassment. That's an embarrassment.
They didn't, but they gave him some water and they went on with his testimony. The prosecutor continued to put that nonsense up.
But how can anybody trust that? Like, he's high. He doesn't know what he's saying.
So you're a criminal defendant, and the prosecutor's bringing witnesses who are admittedly stoned out of their gourd to offer state's evidence against you. How is that fundamental fairness, which is what due process really is? The reason I played that is because, first off, I think it's hilarious, but it's also really sad. It's also really sad because this is the quality of the work being done in the name of District Attorney Fani Willis as we speak right now.
Yes. Well, also, I do want to mention before we go, Fani has already been disqualified in this particular RICO action with Trump and the co-defendants. There was one co-defendant. I just shared this. If you see the article where she was qualified previously. See, judge disqualifies Fani Willis, district attorney, from targeting Georgia lieutenant governor nominee and election probe. And that was because
now the current lieutenant governor, right?
Yeah, and that was because she was then holding a fundraiser for his opponent, so to try to help his opponent win. And the judge was like, "What are you doing? You can't be prosecuting the guy and then out there actively campaigning against him. This is insane." So I think this was not as damaging as her lying on the stand about getting kickback $20,000 in kickbacks from her boyfriend. The boyfriend lied, she lied, the boyfriend's attorney lied. Everybody's lying in that case, and she can't get disqualified. But over here, she raises money for the guys for his opponent in an election, and he gets disqualified. So I think there's a lot here for this appeals court. I hope they take it because, she's already been disqualified. So for the people who think that we're just talking nonsense, this is something. She's got a problem. She's always had a problem, and hopefully,
if you can get disqualified. See, this was before the man was even a defendant. He would have been a defendant, but this was during the special purpose grand jury. A different judge said, "No, you've got a political conflict of interest here," as if you can't say the same about everybody else. She's got a political conflict of interest here, so she could not include him. She took that instance of this and then she referred that to the prosecuting attorney's council, which is the process in Georgia, and it still hasn't gone anywhere. In other words, they have not referred this to another DA, and it's for the same reasons I'm saying that if she gets disqualified from this case, he may not dismiss the indictment, but it's going to languish. It's going to be an orphan indictment because nobody else is going to want to touch it.
Yeah,
right?
and I think if Trump gets to the election, because I honestly think Trump is on his way to winning, and I never thought I'd be able to say that about it after he lost to Biden, but I think he's on the way to winning. And I think the issue is that if they don't get these trials on before November, that first Tuesday in November when we vote, and if he gets elected, I think that's the end of the game. I think all this stuff goes away.
Well, because you're probably not going to because there's no way that Judge McAfee or any other judge, because by the way, Judge McAfee could very well be out of a job the end of this year as well.
Yeah,
he's now got opposition. But there's no judge that's going to be able to get a sitting president if Trump wins into court in a criminal case. That's just not going to happen. They're going to have to pause it or do something with it. We're in uncharted territories. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I do know that nobody's going to get a sitting president to stand for a trial in Fulton County Superior Court under any circumstances. So it's also true, and somebody had posed the question, and I forget who, but in the chat, someone had asked, can Trump pardon him? No, he could not pardon him.
Georgia.
Presidents can't. They have no pardon power under state prosecutions. And likewise, our governor can't either. Our governor could not pardon Trump now. He couldn't pardon him if he wins the election, because only the Board of Pardons and Paroles. Georgia is a southern state, and as I recall from civics in about kindergarten or so, they told me that during Reconstruction, they took a lot of things a lot of powers out of the hands of Southern governors and placed these powers elsewhere so that they wouldn't be misused. They didn't want Southern governors to be pardoning Klansmen and things like that. So they took that power away and they gave it to, and now it exists with the Board of Pardons and Paroles. And so the pardon could only happen, after a conviction. So the governor really here has no role. I see a lot of people blaming Brian Kemp for not stopping this trial, but there's nothing honestly he can do about it right now.
Yeah, and one thing too, also too, the reason why I said if Trump gets elected, all this kind of goes away, because for those 4 years he'll have sovereign immunity. So as the head of state and head of government, you can't be held into criminal court under international and under U.S. law. So if he gets elected, they can't try him in any of these cases. And obviously the federal cases stop automatically. He can essentially pardon himself, right? Those go away, the 2 federal cases. But all this state stuff, essentially it's on pause for 4 years. So, and just like with the lieutenant governor, if Fani loses his case has just still been out there, right? Nobody took it up. It's the same. She was going to charge that guy, hopefully, but he didn't get anything. And I think because everyone else probably evaluates this case, says it's just not worth it for us. So, it's right now. I think it's Fani or nothing. And she's fighting for 2 things. She's fighting for her career to try to keep this case, because this case is her career now. And number 2, and I think she knows that if she gets disqualified, she probably loses her job along with the case. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I'm hoping
maybe her law license, and who knows, maybe
that should be gone no matter what happens, because this is crazy what happened. It's just as insane. But listen, thank you so much for having me. Like, my God, we gotta circle the whales with this, huh?
Well, I mean, we got to do it again, and of course I'll come on with you anytime.
Thank you so much.
Now that we connect, thanks for connecting with me. I just want to take just a real quick minute before we go. Thank all the people. I've tried to put the super chats up here pretty much as they've come in, but we've had some that came that I probably missed. And I want to say thanks to everybody. That really means a lot. I'm trying to grow the channel. I'm trying to optimize it. And obviously I need to learn how to operate the go live button. So that's going to require some advanced training on my part. But we've had folks from all over the world chiming in here today, and I think that's great. And we really, really appreciate it. I want to say thanks to everyone. And if I've missed anybody, please forgive me. I will make it up to you. I will try to do better next time. But thank you to everyone who has joined. And if you can always join later. This is obviously going to exist on the internet, and you can always join. The memberships are great. It allows me to interact with folks in a different way, and hope to continue to do that. So thanks again, everybody. And Nate, thank you, buddy.
Hey, Phil, I got to help you out. Listen, you've been here with us for over an hour. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, come on, guys. Really, come on. You've been here and you love the conversation. We see the chat. Just hit that subscribe button and join Phil on his journey. I'm so happy that you've asked me to come on, and I can't wait to do it again. We definitely got to make this happen, especially with this YSL case, because I think that's also crazy too. So listen, everybody in the chat, thank you guys so much for your support, and don't forget, hit that subscribe button. Let's get Phil to over what we want to go to over to 1 million, but let's get to 100,000 first. Let's get to 100,000. Let's do it.
All right. Well, you're too kind. And hey, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Go be with your family. And we will see everybody next time on, what are we calling it? The Fani Files, or as the Fani turns, or
it's funny because some of the people call it the Fani Fannies. The Fani Fanny. I was like, what? It works. So
all right. Good night, everybody. Thanks so much. Appreciate you.